The rain fell in sheets across downtown Chicago as Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped out of Northwestern Memorial Hospital. At 42, she was one of the most sought-after cardiothoracic surgeons in the Midwest, reputation built on steady hands and an even steadier ability to detach. Her colleagues called her the machine behind her back. She pretended not to know. Her designer umbrella snapped open with practiced efficiency as she walked toward her Mercedes. Another 16-hour day. Another heart saved on the operating table. Another evening she'd spend alone in her lakefront condo, eating takeout over case files. She was reaching for her car door when she noticed him. A boy, maybe 8 years old, standing in the rain without an umbrella, holding up a small cardboard sign that was quickly dissolving in the downpour. Beside him sat a plastic container filled with something colorful. "Bracelets, ma'am? I made them myself." "Only $2. Elena paused. The boy's clothes were clean but worn. His sneakers had holes near the toes, stuffed with what looked like newspaper. But it was his eyes that stopped her, dark brown, serious, too old for his face. "You shouldn't be out here alone," she said. "Where are your parents?" "Don't have any," he said it simply, without self-pity. "I live with my grandpa. He's sick. I'm trying to get money for his medicine." Something about the way he said it, the matter-of-factness. The quiet determination made Elena's chest tighten in a way she hadn't felt in years. "What kind of medicine?" "The kind for his heart. The pharmacy said it cost $347, but Grandpa only had $12 left after rent. I made $43 so far." He looked down at his container of bracelets, then back up at her. "I need to sell 152 more." Elena did the math automatically. At $2 each, standing in the rain, this child would need weeks, months maybe. "What's your name, Marcus?" "Marcus Johnson." "Marcus, where do you live? Where's your grandfather right now?" "At home." "He can't walk so good anymore." "He doesn't know I'm out here." Marcus's voice wavered for the first time. "Please don't tell him. He'd be real upset. He says I shouldn't miss school, but I already know everything they're teaching anyway. And Grandpa's more important than fractions." Elena should have kept walking. She had a surgery at 6 a.m. She had case files waiting. She had a life carefully constructed to avoid exactly this kind of entanglement. Instead she said, "Show me." Marcus led her through streets she'd driven past 1,000 times without really seeing. The gleaming hospital towers gave way to check-cashing stores, then boarded-up buildings, then a housing project that looked like it had been forgotten by everyone who ever promised to remember. They climbed 4 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. Had been broken, Marcus explained, for 2 years. The apartment was small, maybe 600 square feet, but immaculate. Every surface was clean. Books were stacked neatly in the corners, library stickers on their spines. On one wall hung a framed photograph of a young soldier in military dress, medals gleaming on his chest. And in a worn recliner by the window sat an elderly black man, oxygen tube in his nose, a crocheted blanket across his legs. He looked up when they entered, and Elena saw his eyes widen with fear. "Marcus, who is this woman? What did you do?" "Nothing, Grandpa. She's nice. She's a doctor. I don't need a doctor." "We can't afford." "Mr. Johnson." Elena stepped forward, using the voice she employed to calm patients before surgery. "I'm not here to charge you anything. I am here because your grandson was standing in the rain trying to sell bracelets to buy your medication." The old man's face crumpled. "Marcus, I told you. I told you not to. You told me to be brave, Grandpa." Marcus climbed onto the arm of the recliner, wrapping his thin arms around the old man's shoulders. "You told me when things get hard, you find a way. That's what Johnsons do." Elena watched them hold each other, and something shifted in her chest, something that felt uncomfortably like her heart actually beating for the first time in years. "I'm going to examine you," she told Mr. Johnson, "and then we're going to figure out what to do next." His name was William Johnson. Sergeant William Johnson, she learned, as she checked his vitals with equipment she'd retrieved from her car. He'd served 2 tours in Vietnam, earned a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star, then come home to work 35 years at the Ford plant in South Chicago. His wife, Margaret, had died 6 years ago. His only daughter, Marcus's mother, had died of an overdose 2 years after that. "The state tried to take Marcus then," William said quietly, while Marcus was in the kitchen making them instant coffee. "Said I was too old, too sick. But that boy had already lost everything. I wasn't going to let him lose me too. How have you been managing? Margaret's life insurance. It's almost gone now." And my pension barely covers rent since they raised it last year. He looked toward the kitchen, where Marcus was carefully counting out coffee grounds. He doesn't know how bad it is. I don't want him to know. He's 8 years old. He should be worrying about baseball and video games, not whether his grandfather's gonna die. Elena looked at William's swollen ankles, listened to the fluid crackling in his lungs. Without the right medication, without proper treatment, he had weeks, maybe a month or two if he was lucky. Mr. Johnson, you're in congestive heart failure. The medication Marcus was trying to buy, it's a stopgap. You need surgery. I know. William smiled, and it was the saddest thing Elena had ever seen. New for 6 months. Hospital said I'd need a new valve, maybe more. Said it'd cost more than I'd make in 3 lifetimes, even with Medicare covering some. Only thing I haven't made peace with is leaving that boy alone. Marcus returned with 3 mismatched mugs of coffee, beaming with pride. Grandpa taught me to make it. He says I make it too strong, but strong is good, right? Strong means brave. Elena took the mug from his small hands and felt something crack open inside her, some wall she'd debuilt so carefully after her own father had died. Alone in a hospital room in Mexico while she was presenting at a conference in Boston. Too busy to fly home. Too important to say goodbye. She told herself that saving strangers made up for it. That the hundreds of hearts she'd repaired balanced the ones she'd broken. But sitting in this tiny apartment, watching an 8-year-old boy care for his dying grandfather with nothing but love and homemade bracelets, she knew she'd been lying to herself for years. Marcus, she said, can I see those bracelets you made? He ran to get his container, returning with a collection of woven friendship bracelets in every color. They were surprisingly well-made, intricate patterns, tight knots, careful work. I watch videos on the library computer, he explained. Grandpa takes me every Saturday when he's feeling okay. The librarian, Miss Chan, she saved me videos on a special drive so I could watch them at home. They're beautiful. Elena examined them one by one. How much for all of them? Marcus counted quickly. I have 27 left. That's $54, but you already helped us. You don't have to. I want to. Elena pulled out her wallet, then paused. Actually, I have a better idea. What happened over the next 72 hours would later strike Elena as the most medically inadvisable, professionally questionable, personally reckless thing she'd ever done. She also knew it was the only right thing she'd done in years. She called in every favor she'd accumulated over 2 decades. William admitted under a program for veterans that she'd forgotten existed until she spent 4 hours researching it. Found a medication assistance program that covered 90% of his prescriptions. Pulled strings to get him moved up the surgery wait list, not because of money or connections, but because a resident she'd trained now worked in scheduling and owed her for saving his career after a nearly catastrophic mistake. The surgery was risky. William's heart was weaker than she'd hoped. But at 4 a.m. on a Thursday morning, Elena stood in an operating room and did what she'd been trained to do. She opened a chest, repaired what was broken, and put it back together. Except this time, she actually cared if her patient lived. When William woke up in recovery, Marcus was asleep in the chair beside him, wearing one of his own bracelets on each wrist. Elena stood in the doorway, exhausted in a way that felt different from her usual exhaustion. William saw her and raised one trembling hand. Why? He whispered. Why would you do all this for strangers? Elena thought about her father. About the phone calls she'd ignored because she was preparing for surgery. About the voicemail she still had saved on her phone, his voice weak but warm. Mia, I just wanted to hear your voice. Don't worry about coming home. I know you're saving lives. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. He died 6 hours later. She'd listened to that voicemail 347 times. Because you're not strangers anymore, she said finally. And because someone taught Marcus that when things get hard, you find a way. She paused. I forgot that somewhere along the line. He reminded me. Recovery was slow but steady. Elena visited every day, telling herself it was medical supervision, knowing it was something else entirely. She learned that Marcus had tested at a 6th grade reading level but had been held back because he missed too much school caring for William. She learned that William had coached Little League for 20 years after retiring, that half the men in the neighborhood still called him Coach. She learned that Margaret, his wife, had made the crochet things about herself. He refused to let the nurses wash. She learned that she remembered how to laugh, really laugh, when Marcus showed her increasingly elaborate bracelet designs and demanded her honest critique. She learned that she'd been eating takeout alone not because she was busy, but because she'd convinced herself she didn't deserve company. She learned that the machine had a heart after all. It had just been in bypass for 15 years. When William was discharged 3 weeks later, Alina made her proposal. "I have a house," she said. They were sitting in the hospital garden, Marcus running ahead of them chasing pigeons. "It's in Oak Park, 4 bedrooms. A yard. I'd bought it when I thought I'd have a family someday, before I decided my career was enough." William watched her carefully. "Dr. Vasquez. Elena. Please. Elena. What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that house has been empty for 8 years. I'm suggesting that I have more money than I know what to do with and more emptiness than I know how to fill. I am suggesting that Marcus needs a yard and a good school district and someone who can actually help him with his homework. Because, no offense, I saw your attempt at explaining fractions." William's eyes glistened. "That boy has been my whole world since the day he was born." "I know. That's why I'm not suggesting you let me take him. I'm suggesting you let me join you." Elena took a breath. "I talked to my hospital's legal team. There's a path to becoming Marcus's legal guardian alongside you, shared custody. I'd pay for everything, school, activities, whatever he needs. You'd stay with him, raise him, be his grandfather. I'd just be there, present. The way I wasn't for my own father." "Why?" William asked again. Elena looked at Marcus, who had given up on the pigeons and was now demonstrating an elaborate dance move to an amused nurse. "Because he stood in the rain selling bracelets when he could have given up. Because you raised him to believe the world would help if he just asked. Because," her voice cracked, "because I spent 20 years fixing hearts. And I think it might be time to actually use mine." William was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and colorful, a bracelet, woven in the intricate pattern Marcus had been perfecting. "He made this for you. Told me it was for his doctor who doesn't smile enough. Said he picked green because it's the color of new leaves and new leaves mean second chances." Elena took the bracelet with trembling fingers. "Okay," William said, "but Marcus gets to decide. If he doesn't want this, we walk away, no hard feelings. Deal?" They called Marcus over and explained in simple terms what Elena was offering: a new school, staying with Grandpa always, but also having Elena around, someone to drive him to school when Grandpa was tired, someone to help with homework, someone to come to his basketball games. Marcus listened seriously, his small face scrunched in concentration. Then he looked at Elena. "Would you wear my bracelet every day?" Elena slipped the green bracelet onto her wrist. "Every day." "Would you learn how to make them? So we can make them together?" "I would." "Would you double key hesitated. Would you be there? Like actually there? Not just sometimes, but really there?" Elena thought about all the times she hadn't been there. For her father, for her patients beyond the operating table. For herself. "Yes," she said. "I will be there. Actually there. I promise." Marcus considered this for another moment. Then he launched himself at her, wrapping his arms around her waist with fierce strength. "Okay," he said into her coat. "You can be our family, but you have to smile more. Grandpa says people who don't smile enough aren't using their faces right." Elena laughed and realized she was already smiling. 6 months later, Elena sat on the back porch of her house, their house, watching Marcus practice basketball in the driveway. William sat beside her in a comfortable chair, his color good, his breathing easy, a cup of tea steaming in his hands. "He's getting better," William observed. "Coach Martinez says he might make the travel team next year." "He will. He's too stubborn not to," William chuckled. "Wonder where he gets that from." On her wrist, Elena wore the green bracelet. She hadn't taken it off since the day Marcus gave it to her, not even during surgery. The nurses had commented on it. She told them it was a reminder. Of what? They'd asked. That some hearts, she'd said, can't be fixed with surgery. Her phone buzzed a work email. A colleague asking for a consult. Another opportunity to prove she was still the machine. She turned the phone over and left it. Marcus made a basket and turned to whoop in triumph. "Did you see that? Elena, did you see?" "I saw." "Grandpa, did you see?" "I saw, boy." "Now do it again." Marcus retrieved the ball, grinning, and set up for another shot. Behind him, the oak tree William had insisted on planting was starting to show new leaves, small and green and reaching toward the sun. Elena thought about the night she'd first met Marcus, standing in the rain with his cardboard sign and his plastic container of bracelets, trying to save his grandfather with $2 at a time. She thought about the life she'd been living before successful, respected Hollow. She'd fixed hundreds of hearts over the years. But she'd needed an 8-year-old boy to teach her that some hearts don't need surgery. They just need someone to stand in the rain with them. Elena? Marcus had abandoned basketball and was now standing in front of her, slightly out of breath. I have a question. What is it? My friend David at school. He calls his mom's friend who lives with them his aunt. Like, not a real aunt, but a choose aunt. He fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. Could I? Would it be okay if I called you something like that? Not Mom, I know you're not my mom, but something. Elena's throat tightened. She looked at William, who was watching them with wet eyes and a small nod. What would you want to call me? Marcus thought about it seriously. Maybe Tia? That's aunt in Spanish, right? You said your family spoke Spanish. It could be like, you're part of both of our families. Yours and mine and Grandpa's, all together. Tia laters. The word Elena says, nieces and nephews in Mexico called her, the ones she hadn't visited in 5 years because she was always too busy. I would love that, she whispered. Marcus beamed. Then, with the quick emotional pivots only children can manage, he grabbed the basketball. Okay, Tia, watch this, I've been practicing a new move. William reached over and squeezed Elena's hand. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The sun was setting over Oak Park, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In the driveway, Marcus missed his shot, groaned dramatically, and immediately tried again. Elena watched him, this boy who had stood in the rain selling bracelets, who had reminded her that hearts weren't meant to be machines, who had given her something she hadn't known she was missing. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Dr. Elena Vasquez the Machine, the best cardiothoracic surgeon in the Midwest, the woman who had fixed 1,000 hearts without ever using her own, felt complete. Not because she had saved anyone, but because finally, after all these years, she had let someone save her,